Hi guys, anyone who's watched this channel knows that I love a good value, and this lens right here is a 20mm f2.8. It's a full frame lens, it is autofocus, it is great optically, and it is $158. Yes, you heard me correctly. You should check the links to make sure that that is the price. That's what they told me the price was going to be before launch date, which is today, but I'm having trouble believing it is $158 because this lens punches way above that. This may be the best value lens that I have ever recommended on this channel, and we should talk about it. So first I want to thank Viltrox for sending over an early release copy so that I could review it for you fine folks. But look at this. This is my 20mm f1.8 Sony G lens. And do you see the size difference? I know this is a 1.8 and this is a 2.8, but still, like, that is bananas because this isn't a giant lens, and I often use this for vlogging, but this, oh my goodness. In fact, you know what? Let's show you this in action as a vlogging lens, because I think that is a major strength for this guy. So here we are on train tracks that I'm probably not supposed to be on. I'm far enough away that I probably won't die, and I'm using dynamic active stabilization on the little ZV-E1. Oh boy, this is a bit of a dream setup right here. I have this tiny little lightweight lens, and it's still wide enough for me to vlog my gorgeous face with the dynamic active stabilization. Woo, Nelly. Let's switch to the active stabilization, which should be shakier but wider. It is indeed wider and indeed shakier. That dynamic active stabilization, that is something, which is why I love when a lens like this comes out, because now there is a very cost-effective way to use my ZV-E1 when it comes to vlogging. Go get this little lens right here. You are good to go. Probably go somewhere less dangerous than where I am. But you know what? I'm a rebel, all right? Tough. If a train hit me, the train, he'd be the one going to the hospital, guaranteed. And for a comparison, here is the Sony 20mm f1.8. I've set it at 1.8 to see what the background blur, the difference in that blur, and if it's worth it to you to get this bigger, heavier, and far more expensive lens. So this is just the dynamic stabilization, the regular active stabilization. I'll switch to dynamic now. I think I'm holding it in about the same spot that I had the Viltrox lens. So let's switch that up. Dynamic active stabilization with the 20mm f1.8, holding this out pretty much as far as I am comfortable holding it out, because I do want a wider field of view. It's better, to be honest, the ZV-E1 with something like a 16mm, but those are hard to come by in terms of getting a small, lightweight lens. So check this out. What do you think? Huh? Compared to the Viltrox. So now we're back on the Viltrox doing dynamic active stabilization. I wanted to save my shoulder a little bit of grief, so I got the little lens put on, and I figured I'd tape my walk. Film, people say, but it's really, there's no film in this camera, but I would film my walk on the way back to safety, away from all these trains, and more importantly, people who work here who might yell at me, because I don't like being yelled at. Now, Viltrox themselves have released a wider lens that is one of their more pro lenses right here. This is the 16mm f1.8, and this is a fantastic wide-angle lens. I reviewed this quite recently, but when it comes to the old vlogging and hand-holding, you know, when you're walking around filming your mug, this one is a bit bigger, and it's a lot bigger and heavier than this guy right here. So even though the focal length is a little bit tighter, I still think this is a much more enjoyable vlogging experience. So with my little selfie stick, it's a little tripod that has a stick extender. I could extend it out a little bit further if I wanted to get more field of view on that dynamic stabilization. This is actually the tripod that I was using on that walk. It's a little quick release one from Ulanzi, and I just put it right there. And if I need a little extension, I just pull it out. There you go. Bob is your uncle, and then quick release, we are off. But of course I can't just show you video. I also took some photos with this bad boy, and here they are. now let's give you some facts, figures, technical aspects of this guy. 152 grams. It is 152 grams. A joy to pick up and take around. Of course, it is made of mostly plastic when it is that amount of lightweight. It does have a little metal mount, and the metal mount has a USB-C port for updating. And Viltrox has already provided 2 updates to me, so they definitely will be updating things as time goes by, and is a very convenient way to update your lens. Just plug it right into your computer. It has a 52mm filter thread, so not the most common filter thread size in the world, but you could definitely get filters to fit this guy. There are no bells, no whistles, no buttons, no switches, no aperture ring, just a focus ring that turns decently smoothly. The build quality is just okay. You know, it's a plastic lens made to be lightweight, but being $158 and being this functional, I think the build quality is just fine. It also has a plastic lens hood that is not a fantastically sturdy lens hood, one you might expect from a lower priced lens, but it does get the job done. It has a minimum focusing distance of 0.19 meters, so when you have a wide lens like this, you can get fairly close to your subject, and that way you can get some nice background blur, even though it is an f2.8. The lens is sharp in the center and sharp right to the corners. It has a little bit of vignetting down at f2.8, but that goes away as you stop it down. And one of the great things about this lens is that it has minimal distortion. So with a wider lens like a 20mm on a full frame, sometimes you'll be taking cityscapes, you know, landscapes or architecture, things like that, and you want your straight lines, and this guy will provide that because you don't have a lot of distortion. Something else it doesn't have much of is focus breathing. The focus breathing is extremely well controlled on this lens. In fact, the focus breathing is much better than on my 20mm G lens. My 20mm Sony f1.8 has far more focus breathing than this guy. Now, with that Sony 20mm, if you have a Sony camera that has focus breathing compensation, then that can compensate for that focus breathing and you will have no focus breathing. However, if you don't have a camera with focus breathing compensation, then this lens would be far better for you. The autofocus is fast and reliable. It's not on par with something like a G Master lens that is instant and dead silent. You will hear a little bit of noise from the motors when you're focusing, especially from close to far away. And sometimes you get a little micro jitter before it grabs focus, but it does grab focus really quickly and it latches on. You can track things just fine. The autofocus performs really, really well, but if you are using the onboard microphone on your actual camera and you're doing long distance focus pulls, then you are going to hear, you know, some of that autofocus noise. Chromatic aberration. I couldn't find any chromatic aberration in my shots with this lens. I was extremely impressed. I was sure at this price point I was going to see the purple fringing, you know, but no, this just so clean. The images, I could zoom in to 400% and I'm still not seeing any chromatic aberration. Now, when it comes to the loca, you can see the longitudinal chromatic aberration. You can see some loca, and also when you look for the loca and you're looking at the minimum focus distance, you can see that this lens is a bit softer at the minimum focus distance than something like the Sony 20mm f1.8. So that is a situation where the Sony wins out. It has, at the minimum focusing distance, it has a sharper image with more contrast, and it also has less loca, the Sony lens, than this guy. But honestly, I have no problem with this whatsoever. It would be nice if the minimum focus distance had a little more contrast, but I am rarely taking photos with the 20mm like that. And because of the lens coating, it also has some pretty good flare and ghosting resistance. So when there are bright lights in the shot, you will get some flare and some ghosting, but nowhere near the amount I expected. I thought this would be very bad in those categories because, once again, it is $158, but to my delight, I find that once again this lens punches above its price point. Now, something I don't love about the lens, at 2.8, the bokeh balls, when it comes to bright lights in the background, you can see the aperture blades, the 7 aperture blades that are on this. They, even though they're supposed to be rounded, you can definitely make out the blades when you were looking at the bokeh balls at f2.8. You stop down, it goes away, but really with a 20mm lens, they're not going to be very prominent in your frame, and in all the photos I take at this focal length, I am not really concerned with some aperture blades in bokeh balls that are so far off in the distance you can't really see them anyway. For me, it is not a big issue, but depending on who you are, that is something to take note of. So let me just sum this up. You get a 20mm f2.8 full frame lens that is 152 grams, that has low distortion, it has low focus breathing, it has almost no chromatic aberration, the locus is well controlled, the flaring is well controlled, the autofocus is reliable, and it is $158. I don't know how Viltrox did this, why they're selling it at this price point, but I do think anybody, especially if you like the vlogging with full frame, if you own a ZV-E1, my goodness, I can't see why you would not get this lens. I love this lens. And you know what? I should also add, if you have a Sony APS-C camera, an A6700, ZV-E10, FX30, this thing could be a fantastic addition. You want to shoot at around a 30mm focal length, full frame equivalent, then right here, you're still getting an f2.8 at $158. So this is a lens you could definitely use on the APS-C system. Another great bargain for even the APS-C cameras. Now, of course, it is not perfect, as you might expect at this price point, but it is pretty perfect for what I want it for, and I am going to be using this thing all of the time. So let me know down below if this is something that you would be interested in, and if not, what type of lens would you be interested in? We'll have a nice little discussion about it. Thanks for watching this. We'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye. My cold is still not totally better, so I'm gonna go get some more medicine. All right, see you now.